What's up, fellas?
Hey guys, I'm recording from my basement, as you can see.
What's up,
Look
Nick?
at all my beautiful can lights.
There's so many.
Why are some of them out?
I can't really get up there and reach them.
You got 4 kids. You should just stack them on your shoulders and have Jack get up the 1-year-old get up on top and change the bulb out. It's safe. Your wife would approve.
Or just make some tall friends, or just get some tall friends.
Yeah, they're other parts of the country, unfortunately. But
there you go.
Hey, speaking of 4 kids, before we get into the episode here, breaking news in the Gollner family business, there's going to be 5 kids. We announced it yesterday at my daughter's birthday.
Nick. That is awesome.
Wow, congrats, man.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you, guys.
I'm going to buy you a gift certificate for a psychiatrist now.
I just had too many light bulbs we had to get changed. So some of them were too tall. We needed another child to stick on top of the totem pole.
Amazing. Wow. Congratulations.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
So
we're doing this new young entrepreneur series, and I'm trying to really support the series by making a bunch of future entrepreneurs.
Well, that's a good segue. I was just going to say, speaking of young people, our latest series is the Young Shop Founder series. And so we have probably a dozen, maybe by this point, under 30-year-old or 30 and under that are joining us and talking about the stories of starting their shop and deciding to go all in on the machining industry. And Larry, you are a legend in the industry. You've been around way longer than all those people have been born. Even Mike and I, for sure, as well.
Yeah, that's a nice way to call somebody old. Yeah,
Larry, for the old manufacturing leader segment with Larry.
Yeah, Larry, old. Larry, since you're the oldest, since you're like Methuselah. Yes.
Well, yes, some of these founders were born in the 1900s, along with the rest of us, but some of them were born in the 2000s.
Some of them.
So.
Excellent. Excellent.
In the last century.
That's right. Yeah. Born in the last century. Yeah. So Mike, maybe you can queue up. What was the question? We figured we could just ask Larry one question and we'd have the entire show just locked and loaded.
Well, Larry, so you know who we're talking to, this next generation of young shop leaders.
Sure.
And you've seen a thing or two. So we did want to kind of go into this with what advice would Larry Robbins give to, a young 20-something entrepreneur starting their first shop out?
Don't move out of your parents' house. Let them pay the bills the rest of your life.
There you go.
No, it's, well,
what? Some of them started that way, so that's a good start.
I started that way.
Yeah.
You know what? A lot of people go full circle, and I've had friends that started companies that moved back into their families' homes just to save enough money to keep their company going. So I definitely see that happening. But I think the best advice you can give is use the resources around you of people in an older generation. I'm not going to say my generation, but I'll say an older generation, or maybe even your colleagues that may have already experienced it. Any information that you glean from a conversation and you can use towards your own success or the industry's success. Because let's face it, every person in this industry is successful makes the rest of the industry stronger. I would tell people to make sure that they're basically paying attention to the small things. The big things hit you in the face. It's the little things that people miss. It's I forgot to register with the state for my taxes. Just things that you don't think of if you've never done it before. I remember I started my company in my 20s. And I remember sitting down with my dad, who had owned a business at that point for probably 30 years, and saying, listen, I'm thinking of putting this together. And he goes, well, what's your plan? And I said, well, I plan to be successful. And he looked at me, well, how do you plan to do that? I was like, well, with the information I already have available to me, and as I go, I'm sure I'll learn more. And he just looked at me. He goes, so do you have a bankruptcy lawyer? And I was like, what?
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah. And he said, well, what's your business plan? I said, I have a business plan. I said, it's in my head right now. He goes, did you think of putting it on paper? I was like, well, I'm not going to borrow money. And he was like, well, where are you coming up with the funds to do this? I go, well, I've saved money, and I'm not going to have any more toys for now, and I'm going to put all my resources into this. And he said, yeah, but if you don't have a plan, how are you going to, and then he said the ultimate, if you don't have a plan, you plan to fail. And I was like, is that some cliche from like 1906? And he goes, no, I think I just thought of it. I was like, well, I think I've heard it before.
My dad does the same thing. He steals cliches and pretends they're good.
Yeah, exactly. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yeah.
And that really hit me. It was like getting punched in the face because, I had a plan in my head, a basic plan. But then when you start putting things in writing and sit down and you start doing some research and talk to other people, all of a sudden, I end up with like 70 pages of information.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I sat down afterwards, like, okay, what part of this is relevant? He goes, every bit of it. And I was like, okay, at what point do I apply? He goes, well, there's a secret. You have to figure out at what point in your progression do you apply the ideas that some you're going to apply too soon, some you're going to apply too late. And I was like, well, how am I going to figure out which one's too soon or too late? He goes, you'll learn from your mistakes. And I was like, okay. And I figured, well, I went to college. I should be smart enough to figure this out. Well, I made a lot of mistakes. And thankfully, they weren't expensive mistakes. Some were more expensive than others.
Sure.
But they were probably the most valuable mistakes I made, worth learning through death by fire. Throwing myself in both feet first. You go into something thinking exactly what you're going to do and how you're going to get there. And you're going to have a basic idea. And the further you go along, the easier it gets to know for the next steps what to do. Mike, I'm sure when you bought your first shop, the experience was totally different than your last shop.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
So for me, it was the same way, as I expanded and, I started as one thing and ended up being another thing. But in my experience, every time I went through a situation, I learned something new. And every time I made a mistake, they were the most valuable lessons I learned. And the ones I remembered the best. And they didn't have to cost me money to make me learn. They needed to raise my awareness that maybe I didn't know what I was talking about. Maybe I wasn't always right. I felt like after the first couple of months, I should call and apologize to my parents for thinking I knew everything I thought I knew. And when you realize that you have so many resources around you that you just have to know how to use those resources, but you also have to be prepared to share your information with someone else. I've always said, every time I help someone, I'm like, you just have to make me one promise. They're like, oh God, what's that? And I was like, just pay it forward. Someday, 10 years from now, when you have someone in your organization that's looking to maybe venture off on their own, don't say, why are you going to leave me? Say, are you leaving because you're not happy? And when they say no, it's something I've always wanted to do. I probably helped a dozen employees go into their own companies. A couple of them became competitors. And you know what? I'm still friends with all of them because I saw the value in having competition is healthy if it's the right kind of competition. So I always found value in having people that I could discuss these things with. And I was never afraid to talk, as you can well tell. So I never had a problem picking up the phone, and I never had a problem admitting that I didn't know what I was talking about. If that made any sense, what I just said.
No, it does a lot. I often say like this imposter syndrome, where you feel like you need to know everything, or else you're an imposter, and that holds people back. That's one of the episodes I did a long time ago with a young guy, Mike Martin, who Stallion Trunnions, the trunnion table guy.
Sure.
He is one of the brightest young minds in our industry. And he's like, gosh, that episode was so good. I struggle with that all the time. And I'm like, you struggle with that? You're super sharp. You're doing all the CAD concepts. You're doing the photography. You built the website. You run this whole company. And he's like, yeah, but sometimes like a veteran machinist will ask me something. I don't even really know what he's talking about. I'm like, yeah, that makes all of us. I mean, who knows everything? And those that are so afraid to like ask a question or be like, I'm sorry, can you explain that to me? I don't really know what that is. Those people just lost an opportunity to learn.
Being the smartest guy in the room is way too high. That's way too much pressure.
Yeah, wrong room.
I always say, I never want to be the smartest guy in the room. I just want to know who is. That's way too much pressure for me. I mean, I'm a classic underachiever. So for me, the less I have to do to get to where I want to go. And as you get older, you figure out what you can take shortcuts on and what you can't. And that's the beauty of getting older, is you've learned through the years of experience what you should and shouldn't do. Probably the best lesson I ever learned was, I wasn't even in business. I remember my dad telling me as a little boy that, the truth is always the truth. You never have to remember that. He goes, a lie is always a lie. And there's nobody that's that good a liar that can remember that lie forever. So, he would say to me as I got older, can't you just lie to me so I feel better about this? Like, no, you told me not to lie. So which one is it do you want? Do you want me to lie or do you want me to tell you the truth?
Oh, that's such a good lesson, though. Like you have to remember your lie so you can stick to it. But the truth is just the truth. You're not going to forget. That's so good.
Dude, there's no good liars, no good cheats, and no good thieves, because eventually they all get caught in their game. So, to be honest with you, I don't have that kind of time left. What? There's nothing that's that important to me that I need to lie about. So,
what is up, Metalworking Nation, Making Chips family? It is an even year, which means IMTS is coming September 14th through 19th at McCormick Place in beautiful Chicago. It is the largest manufacturing trade show in North America, bringing together thousands of manufacturers, OEMs, and solution providers every 2 years to explore how new technologies are being applied to real shop floors. So whether you're planning future capital investments, benchmarking operations, or simply trying to cut through the noise around emerging technologies, IMTS is designed to help manufacturers make better, more informed decisions. Whether you've been going for years or this might be your first time, put it on your calendar right now. Schedule your time away from the shop. It's good to get out and see new things. It's going to be a big party. I hope to see you there. Go to imts.com and register today.
Well, Larry, I think, you brought up a few things there too that, and I'm sure a lot of this kind of, these younger entrepreneurs that we're interviewing maybe naturally have some of this, but something for all of us to build on. There's really like talking about doing a business plan. And I mean, I probably did my first business plan 30 years ago, and you don't know where to start, right? You just open up a blank piece of paper and you're like, I don't know, I'm going to sell stuff. And then you start trying to figure it out. And, you think about like, and I know Nick and Paul and I have all done this. Larry, I'm not sure if you have or not, but like being able to have a conversation now today with like some of the different AI agents of, hey, I want to create a business plan and I'm going to do this, and like walk me through these questions. And, I mean, 30 something years in business now, when I've had those conversations with some of this AI, like it always asks me questions I hadn't thought about. Right. I mean, so we're in a space where you have like a tool like that available. The amount of information available on the internet and podcasts and all that is through the roof. Right. So there's really no reason not to plan. Right. If you go back to your idea of your first thing you said about getting a good plan together, because you can build that out in more depth than certainly you and I and Paul ever did, and Nick too, really. I mean, this is all emerging technology. And Paul, I know you've done it. Nick, I know you've done it. I mean, how many times have you had that conversation with ChatGPT or whatever that prompted you to go, oh man, I don't know, I hadn't thought about that?
Every time, because I ask it to help me uncover the things that I may have not been thinking about.
Yeah.
That's like specifically how I prompted. I'm like, here's my thoughts. What am I missing? So it's a great example there. But what about you, Paul? You get it right, and ChatGPT says, I have nothing to add. You are the perfect man.
Yeah, that's how it goes every time.
Am I talking to another AI agent? Yes.
I learn stuff from it all the time, for sure. But Larry, what you started to alluding to about learning from others, to me, that just kind of speaks to the power of a network. And not only, what you can learn from other people in your network, but the people that they can introduce you to. I've had so many guests on different shows talk about how, their network has opened up so many doors for them. And just did an episode with a young guy that probably would not under 30, but young shop founder guy, and he always made a point of just being really friendly and open and curious with like cutting tool salesmen and workholding and coolant material or whatever, and more than when he was just an employee at the shops that he worked at. And when he decided to open his own doors, they just, they were such good friends of his. And so, appreciative of his kindness and openness all these years. They're like, yeah, let me introduce you to this person and that person. And he's gotten most of his business from introductions from salespeople.
Sure. Yeah, and that's the power of this industry, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, this industry is so, that you hear that story time and time and time again in this industry. It's incredible.
It's the people you come to know throughout your travels in life. And, it's interesting because in my experience, in my generation, I've had the same set of people that I kind of depend on for honest answers for probably 30 something years. I mean, I remember right after my dad passed away, picking up the phone, and it was probably a week later, and I called my mom and I said, "Hey, let me talk to Dad." And she just got real quiet. And she's like, "If he answers, we're both in trouble." And I said, "Oh, I'm really sorry." She goes, "Honey, I get it." She goes, "I yell his name in the morning, and then I get angry when he doesn't answer. And I realize if he answers now, I'm dead too." So it's true. It's you have to learn through time to be able to adjust and reset and trust that your judgment has become good enough over the years that you can switch that up. Because for me, that was the one person I could call and always know I get an answer that had zero anything but my vested interest at heart. Mm-hmm. I could say out of the group of people I talk to on the regular, including you guys, actually, I never worry about what I talk to you about because I'm not worried about somebody walking away from the information and going, "Hey, I don't think you thought of using it this way." That's not how you guys are built. And I don't associate generally with people like that. So to be honest, I think over time you also perfect getting the information and where you get it. Once you can streamline that, I said a long time ago, one of my kids said to me, "Dad, do you ever worry about losing money?" I was like, "No, once you learn how to making more is not the hardest thing in the world. It's keeping what you have and preserving it for investment and other things that you have to be aware of and how to put your money in the right places so it grows." And, you're going to have certain money that you are more risky with than other money. But in the end, the best word of advice I ever got when it came to financial stuff was pay yourself before you pay anybody else. And as a little kid, I was like, okay, whatever that means. Well, I realized as I got older, what it meant is when you get paid, you better put a certain amount aside. You should have a certain amount for entertainment. And it's the same in business. You have to budget. And that's why companies have budgets. And it never ceases to amaze me, even larger companies, when I talk to friends and I'm like, "Well, what's your budget for that?" "Well, I just give them a sort of a number and nobody holds me to that number." Well, and you guys are still a business doing that? I mean, it's, people will ask me for things. I'm like, "Was that in your budget for this year?" They're like, "No." I said, "Well, let's talk about it. But, big things have to be budgeted for. We can't spend $1 million and we didn't think of that yesterday,
Right.
Yeah. I think of like a couple themes here. So you talked about actually writing down your business plan.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing with a budget, right? They hold you accountable to making sure you've thought through all the little pieces. And that's something that there's probably a lot of people who start a business that never wrote out a business plan and think, "Hey, I know successful people who didn't have one." But when you actually have to put pen to paper, then it makes you think of the things maybe you weren't considering. Same thing with a budget. People operate without a budget or a very loose budget, and they don't budget for more granular costs. And that budget holds you accountable to doing what you said you were going to do in that business plan.
Right.
So kind of all these different mechanisms for holding yourself accountable and making sure you do have a plan that you're either executing or not executing on.
Well, and when you're going through it and you realize this year that you didn't budget for something that you should have, I write everything down now. And I mean, to this day, my kids make fun of me. They're like, "Dad, why don't you just put notes in your computer?" I was like, "Because I won't even remember what the note was. I won't even remember the file that I wrote to save that note. If I write it on a piece of paper, I have it forever." Now I'm to the point where I've progressed to the next level. I use a thing called a Remarkable now because it feels like I'm writing on paper.
Oh, those are so cool. Does everyone? Okay, they're getting a free plug because it's so cool.
Okay.
Have you seen those? It feels like paper, and you write notes, and it's kind of a good middle ground.
I should be
anyway.
getting commission. I've probably sold 50 of those in the last year because everybody
awesome.
here that wants one, I get one.
Yeah.
I bought them for colleagues. I bought them for people overseas that are like, oh my God, it's the best gift. I'm like, well, this is the best gift you ever got. You got cheap friends. But it's true. I mean, those are the things for me. It was like my backpack weighs 30 pounds less because I used to carry around a financial notebook, a budgets notebook, a sales notebook, and an admin notebook. Well, they were all thick books. Now I carry that one Remarkable around. It weighs like a half of what my laptop does. And I can PDF from it. I can email from it as long as I have a Wi-Fi signal and it syncs to my laptop, which is even better. So I never lose anything. I've had this thing for 2 years now. I probably have 1,000 different notes, but I don't lose any of them. And now you classify them and keep them in folders. But organization is probably the one thing most organizations lack. I know that's kind of an oxymoron, but if you're
That's
not
a good quote,
organized
though.
too, I mean,
organization is the one thing organizations lack. I really like that.
It's true. I mean, if people forget to be organized and then they get upset when things don't go the right way, my first thing is like, what were you thinking? Well, I really wasn't. Well, okay, that's pretty apparent, but what were you thinking when you weren't thinking? And they just look at you. I was like, listen, there's this hidden meaning to that. You should sit down before you do anything and at least have a basic framework of a plan. If you don't do that, again, it goes back to planning to fail or failing to plan if you plan to fail. If you plan to whatever, it's late yet. Jesus.
Well,
I was
got
in
you.
the 70s and 80s. It's like, who knows what's going on in my head right now, but it's you just have to be able to be open enough to realize that without a plan, you're taking the biggest crapshoot of your life. And if you want to, I always say to people, you want to waste your money, just send me a check. I'll figure out a way to spend it and I'll send you a nice picture of what you bought me. But other than that, be wise, be smart. I just finished reading a book and it goes, die with zero. And when I first read these things, I was like, oh God, that's hard. But basically what it says is, we all spend our whole lives thinking, I want to leave this to my kids and I want to leave this to my grandkids. Well, live your life first. Whatever's left over, good, they get it. My father said, in the end, I hope I spend my last penny the day I die. Well, he did not, unfortunately. But, it's one of those things you have to remember at some point you're going to hand the stick to somebody else to continue to carry it.
Well,
and you have to make sure that what you're handing them is viable.
Well, I think we going from the segue or the plug into the remarkable, we segue right into probably Larry's next, pillar principle of being organized. We already talked about having a plan, but I think it's important. And since I just did the episode 100 of Machine Shop Mastery and did a bunch of segments of wisdom from all the 99 others, there was this idea of planning like business planning. And then there's the idea of planning like job planning. And when I think of being organized, I think of having a system for executing anything you do in your company, including all your jobs, right? And defining your inspection plan and your manufacturing plan and your work holding plan and your tooling plan. But you have to systematize it and you have to build a process that's repeatable, get it out of your head so you're not just, winging it. And so when you were talking about the way you organize all your notes into little folders on this little cool device, I'm like, that's just like a perfect example of how someone can take what they need to do to be successful in their business and make it very tactical, right? You need to organize your jobs. It has to align with the bigger business plan that you have. So
agreed.
So
well, Paul, it would be like if you had that customer that came to your shop when you had started ProShop for your own use. Mm-hmm. If you hadn't shared that information, think of how different your life would be right now.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you hadn't seen the value of what he saw, think of how different this would all be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That was your operating system as a business, and then it became a lot of other people's operating systems. But your customers are probably not all using it in the exact same way. And so that's kind of a takeaway that we often talk about at my family's business is like our operating system, we call it the Goldner way. Our plan, our way of executing what we're going to do every year is really just like pieces of all these other great systems that we've adopted this from like EOS, or we've adopted this from the business model canvas, or we've adopted this from Toyota and this lean book or that lean book, and we've made it our own, and it works for our company or our, any of the companies we acquire, they follow the same system. But I think like when you read what Toyota says, they're like, hey, the Toyota way is for Toyota solutions to Toyota problems. Right. And my advice to a young entrepreneur would be, it's really valuable to listen to how everybody else solves it. And you should have your own operating system. Right. But don't just copy and paste directly what somebody else does, because you're going to have different problems than they will. It's not going to work identical for you.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. If you don't listen to, I always say, how can you form an opinion if you don't listen to all sides of that argument? Mm-hmm. Right now we got a perfect example in the world that, what's going on in the world politically or economically, or however you look at administrations and things like that. Unless you listen to the positive side and the negative side, how can you form an opinion based on anything but your own beliefs? And I always say, if you're not taking all of those suggestions to heart and then forming your opinion from there, because if you go in with preconceived notions and you're not willing to be flexible, don't start a company. You have to be open. You have to be honest. You have to have the ability to go, wow, I screwed this up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm never afraid to admit when I make a mistake. Mm-hmm. But I think sometimes when you realize you made the mistake and someone doesn't have to point it out to you, it's just how it's perceived. When somebody has to come to me and go, dude, what were you thinking? I was like, what do you mean? And they say, I was like, oh God, I don't know what I was thinking. If I find it on my own, I always feel better. And I feel like when somebody else points it out, it's a bigger slap in the face and I probably remember it better. But finding it on my own, I've done it through a mission of searching and doing a little soul searching. So that's the other thing. You have to be able to search within yourself and realize you have limitations too. You have to surround yourself with people who have great ideas, but they have to align with your company's culture and beliefs and ethics and morals. And the biggest problem companies have is this guy is a rock star. Yeah, the guy's a rock star, but he has a horrible reputation. Do you want that to be synonymous with your company?
Right.
The first year I was president here, if you got called to my office, you usually came in with your head down because we had this innate ability to just move people from one department to another. Well, they're not my problem anymore. They're somebody else's problem. Well, invariably, they all ended up in sales somehow. So they all ended up being my problem. So reality is you have to have the ability to look beyond your own wants and needs and look for what's best for the organization. And if you can't do that, reevaluate what you're going to do. Maybe there are people that should probably never work for themselves because they don't have the ability to admit when they're wrong.
Yeah.
They don't have the ability to admit when they've made a mistake, and they don't have the ability to say, I'm sorry. And I have to be honest, I've ended a lot of conversations with customers like, I'm really sorry that, I didn't see it that way. But I'm sorry if you did, or I'm sorry that we made a mistake, or I'm sorry that you didn't understand what I said. It just gives them the feeling that you're, at least if not sympathetic, you're empathetic with them.
And you have humility.
Manufacturing isn't a one-size-fits-all. It's built on materials, machines, and the methods behind them. In What's Your Method? We talk with the leaders at Methods Machine Tools about how they're helping manufacturers in aerospace, mold making, and machining turn complexity into opportunity.
Hey, welcome to What is Your Method with the experts at Methods Machine Tool. Today we have Johnny LaFleur. He's the product manager for Weiler. Big ol' lathes, right, Johnny?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, Johnny, our question today, and Paul and I were just talking about this before, but you've got these manual machinists, these very experienced machinists that oftentimes we talk about being a dying breed out there. And sometimes they're a little bit hesitant to jump onto a CNC machine because they're like, hey, I can do this right away on my manual machine. So what would you say to that? How do we solve for that challenge of, we want to use the latest technology, but we don't want to slow down an expert veteran manual machinist?
Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously I'm partial to the Weiler because of my experience on it, but I also say that, there's quite a few machines out there that have good conversational controls. And I think that enters a world that can lead to a very good transition from the manual side to the CNC side without causing the intimidation or the hesitation sometimes that a manual. I mean, as a manual machinist, I don't want to give anybody anything. I know how I make this part. You want to make this part, you figure it out, right? Because it's just the way it is. How come your part ain't? Well, I could tell you, but they're going to send it to me next time. You know, I mean, like I said, it's just one of those things that's inherent in our personalities as machinists. And of course, from my side in operations in a machine shop, that drove me crazy because you want to control a process, right? So we have to get to the best of both worlds because I need to have that guy that's got 30 years experience of making parts that are high demand and let's say high demand, quick turnaround parts that my shop depends on to be able to make money. I want to be able to use what he has, whether he's there or not, right? And so ultimately, the CNC world solves that problem, although I lose that experience set that I have with the manual guy and the restrictions and apprehension that he may have of moving into that. So having the conversational control and having an intuitive platform that doesn't cause intimidation and it speaks the language of the machinist. You know, I want a control that says, what's my depth of cut per side, right? I mean, because as a manual machinist, I'm running off a DRO or digital readout or an indicator or my dial. And, you know, I'm thinking per side most of the time. So those little things like that, I want to make into a control that says, hey, give this guy within 3 minutes. I want him in a part. I want him to answer questions over his cutting strategy, what he's trying to accomplish. Is he turning? Is he boring? Is he facing? Is he grooving, threading? And I want 4 or 5 things. I mean, I know what I want to do. I got to tell it where I want to do it. And I want a quick, easy transition to say, here's my features on an OD or my path on this OD, make it quickly and go. So if it's nice and easy to present to that machinist, now he's using his knowledge. Usually, to be honest with you, and I apologize because I know I'm talking 1,000 miles a minute, but
it's all good.
The one thing that we have restrictions on when we go from a manual to a CNC is a manual guy's used to running RPM, right? I spend more time training somebody about surface footage and the advantages of surface footage as opposed to the constant RPM world. And, you know, as a manual guy, I want to make things one step at a time. And one step doesn't just necessarily mean N100 to N200 in our world in the CNC. It may be meaning turning 3 different diameters because I have to make different setups to turn all 3. But on a CNC, I can do all 3 at one time, right? Because I've got, I can make my setup to be able to do that. So with a little bit of engagement on their end to learn the different tooling, I can use a DNMG 432 instead of a triangular insert, or I can use it, or a 45 tool that I'm pushing up against the shoulder to make a chamfer. Now I can do everything with tools, right? So you got to learn a little bit there, but a machinist usually can adapt to that. And now all of a sudden, I've got my best machinist that I trust to make these high dollar components or these quick turnaround parts now has a tool that gives him the ability to knock this out 3 times faster than he did on a manual. And 6 months later, it's remembered and he has it again. Right. And so
that's awesome.
You know, to me, that's where the transition is or has been coming towards. Now it's just a matter of finding more skilled manual machinists to be able to move into those roles, right?
That's awesome, Johnny. It totally resonates with me, you know, coming from my shop days and knowing the experience of these old machinists that can very quickly, you know, get into a part, be making chips in a few minutes versus waiting for the programming department that may not be able to get them something till the next day. And then it's not very efficient. So to bridge that and have something that's repeatable, something that's higher quality, but you can still get into it, you know, almost as fast as you get them the material. What an incredible value for a shop to be able to knock out high value parts quickly.
Yeah. And I think you hit it on the head. Sometimes when you're a manual guy, if I've got to put a steady rest, for example, I usually got to cut a band to be able to put that steady rest on to have a true OD, right? Sounds very simple, but as a programmer, I'm trying to identify and then I have to spell out and draw a picture so that the machinist knows exactly where he needs to put his omni rest at and this step and that step. All of that takes time. The guy that's on that conversational control is already in the cut, right? He's already cut that band and now he's moving forward. And I haven't even drawn my picture of where I need to be linearly from face of the part to the edge of the steady rest, right? So those kind of things are overlooked sometimes. But once again, time is money, and I don't want to go breaking into my slant bed and spend an hour getting everything ready in the programming office and saying, here, I got the whole process for you. Tear down all your tools on this 50-piece order that you're 36 pieces into, and let's start over again.
Mm-hmm. Man, speaking of time being money, I told you, Paul, that Johnny would be money on this segment, and I wish we had more time with him. But we got to wrap up this segment of What's Your Method. So, Johnny, people can go to methodsmachine.com, but how do they connect with you personally?
Yes, you can go to methodsmachine.com and you can click on the machines, and you can easily find the Wilder page to show you the different sizes, configurations. But you can reach me directly at jlafleur@methodsmachine.com. And I'll be glad to answer any technical questions that anybody has for that. I mean, we have a network of salespeople that are knowledgeable, but you can come to me and I'll be glad to get you in the right direction on anything that you need.
That's JLEFLORE at methodsmachine.com.
Yes, sir.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your method.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
In manufacturing, growth isn't accidental, it's engineered. But a lot of suppliers are still building their pipeline on outdated lists, inconsistent follow-up, and hope-based marketing, hoping their website will somehow bring in leads. Gabe Draper, the founder of Factur, knows that struggle. Years ago, he ran a shop that went bankrupt, not because of quality, but because he didn't have a steady way to generate new opportunities. That experience is what led him to build Factur. Factur helps suppliers create consistent sales opportunities by combining targeted outreach with marketing that puts you in front of the right buyers. Their team finds the right companies, starts real conversations, and sets qualified meetings. So if your pipeline swings with referrals or seasonality, Factur brings a system that puts you back in control. And for listeners of this show, Factur is offering a free custom report that highlights the best opportunities in your industry, plus a list of real companies that match what you do. Request yours at facturmfg.com/chips. That's FACTURMFG.com/chips. It's come up on some episodes recently, like working for companies that are humble, including that should be a quality you have in your own company, being humble.
Yep.
It's just better. You know, that means you're open-minded. That means you're open to feedback, collaboration, learning from others. Yeah, it's another good lesson.
Not stealing from, I don't know, I think it was Tim McGraw, Humble and Kind. That song, there's a lot of truth to that. If you can't be humble and kind, you need to reevaluate and look in the mirror and discover who you are as a human being, because in the end, and Nick, you're a sales guy. Mike, you're a sales guy. And Paul, you're all sales guys in the end. You have to be able to sell not only the truth, but something you believe in. If I don't feel passionate about something, I don't even do it anymore. If somebody says to me, what do you think about this? I'm like, it really isn't that important to me. I remove myself because I won't be valuable to that person at that point. And if I can't bring value, I don't want to be involved in the situation, because I don't do anything good for anybody else. And that's my aim at this point. I want to
I always like that in Shark Tank when someone pitches the product and one of the sharks is like, I have no interest in this whole category, so I'm out. It's just like, I don't care about it. I'm not going to care about it, so I don't want to.
Nick, would you start a company that was making clothing? I mean,
no.
There's no relation.
I just show up in something that's going to keep me warm.
Well, I didn't mean it for that reason. But no, seriously. I mean, if it's not something that has some kind of relationship to what you're currently doing or your end game, if your end game is to manufacture clothing, okay, you started in manufacturing and now I don't see where metal cutting and textiles would be the same, but there are similarities. It's all manufacturing.
Sure, yeah. But I mean, I get your point. Like, go after something that you're passionate about or adjacent to something you're passionate about, and you have
exactly. And you can't create passion. Passion has to be something that's in you. I look at multiple generation companies, and Nick, you guys are an anomaly. You're being third generation. What do they say? First generation builds, or starts. Second generation builds. Third generation, like ruins it. Well, not you guys. You guys are planning for the next generation of your company.
He's not done yet.
I was like, we got time, Larry.
I don't know, dude. Let me tell you something, Nick.
He's got a good 20 years left in him. Give him time.
Well, I mean, taking the School of Hard Knocks is a great school to go to, man. And to be honest with you, Nick, you were fortunate enough, like I was, to grow up in a family business. and you have multiple generations. By the time my dad was successful, my grandfather had long been dead. So reality is you have your grandfather, you have your dad, you have your brother, you have you, and you all have different experiences in different ways that you got to the game. As long as you can respect that the last generation got you to the point you're at now, all you can do is take the ball and run to the goal line or get to the next step so the next group can get to the goal line. Or maybe it's fifth generation is going to get, again, I don't know in the end. I sold my company and wasn't worried about generational, but I worked for a company that the third generation is starting to take over. So it's just interesting to watch as an outsider in some ways. But Nick, you guys have an example of a company that's been passed down from generation to generation, but each generation has made their own improvements. I mean, from your grandfather's innovations.
I think that's what I'm getting from this is like the generational entrepreneurship. Yep. It's usually like, okay, someone starts it, and then the next generation builds it, and then the third generation just kind of inherits it, and they didn't have to go through all the hard times of entrepreneurship. That's what I would encourage family businesses is to like try to be intrapreneurial, if you want to use that word, in your own way, because there is so much to learn from that. And if all you're going to do is just a inheritance of what your predecessors did, it's not like the same learning experience. I think if you look at like the three generations in my family, it's not about kudos or anything. It's more about like each generation had its own entrepreneurship, its own big acquisition that changed everything. Or with my grandfather, was an invention that started everything, and then acquisitions that changed everything. And then now, I mean, making chips was kind of like my thing, my entrepreneurial adventure, and it's been going pretty well so far. But I just think about what I would be missing without it. If all I did is just, all right, Dad, it's your thing now, what do you want me to do? I think you're really missing something. So
Nick,
if you're a third generation, fourth generation, figure out a way to be entrepreneurial in spirit, if that's all it is, but definitely entrepreneurial with your mindset.
Mm-hmm. But look at your progression. Look at, you could have easily rested on your laurels, taken what's there, continued to go down the path. You would have grown, but you continue to see value in new companies. I mean, look at what your dad did with the power generation stuff. Look at other things, but very related to what you do, that have made you guys the companies you are now. And Nick, the next generation of your company will take it even further. And the beauty is you're going to be able to witness that. And thankfully, your grandfather's watching what your dad did and what you're doing. And hopefully he'll watch, what your kids do. It would be a great thing to have 4 generations of people. The reality is, if it's 3, it's 3. If it's 4, it's 4. Having that generational view and being able to see the pride that your parents and your grandparents took and the pride that you have in the things that you've added to this organization, those are the things that make companies bigger, better, bolder. Again, Mike, if you'd have just stayed with your first shop and that was it, okay, you would have gotten to a certain point and that would have been your experience.
Sure.
You decided, I love your story where, you went from, doing what venture capital generally does, buy and flip. In 5 years, you get rid of things. You get your money back, you get your investment back, plus you make money. When you realize making things builds generational wealth, not just momentary wealth.
Yeah.
That's, I grew up like that. And I never in all of my wildest dreams, never thought of an idea that didn't involve something being a product or something that you had to make to get to where you go. I never thought about, going into advertising. I mean, I love marketing, but I never thought of being advertising. Because to me, that's writing stuff on a piece of paper for somebody else. So reality is, I like building value. And that's something you have to do in a company. If you're building value and showing your people value, and at the same time, teaching the next generation. And again, it goes back to paying it forward. Anything you do, as long as you're paying it forward to someone else and helping the next generation, you're doing your job. You're doing your duty. You're paying back wherever you can. Some people are better at it than others. But again, be humble. Realize that you're going to learn things from the younger generation too. I can't tell you how many times somebody walks into my office, one of the younger kids, if it's not some wise ass comment about, hey, how old are you? Oh, I told you his dad was younger. Give me $20, So but beyond that, we have some really smart young people working here, and I don't even think they realize sometimes how smart they are. And I like to give them credit now. You get to a certain point, and I said to somebody the other day, it hasn't been about money in a lot of years. They're like, why do you still come to work? I was like, well, if I stayed home, I'd make everybody in my family sick of me, first of all. Second of all, I would go stagnant and brain dead. I have to be involved on a daily basis as far as the social aspect. For me, it's all about people. It's all about the people you get to meet throughout your life and your career. And to be honest with you guys, I never stopped. I mean, I met you guys, I was 61 years old, and now I'm going to be 64 years old. So to be honest, I mean, Nick, I was fortunate enough to know your grandfather and your father. Mike, through happenstance, we met. Paul, same thing. So it's been a great experience. And to be honest, every person in my life has value to me. And surround yourself with people that you find valuable. Somebody may look at you and go, I don't know what the hell he sees in that guy. It doesn't matter what I see in you or someone else. If I perceive that I'm getting value from our relationship and you get some value out of my relationship with you, because again, just like a business deal, if it's not win-win, somebody loses, and that's no good for somebody. So I always say that try to remember that somebody helped you, help somebody else. And if you're asked, don't say you're too busy. Say, I'll call you back if you're too busy right now. And don't forget, call them back. I still owe Paul a call about, we talked about sales. And I need to make a trip out there to sit down and talk to Paul about, something about sales. And to be honest with you, I know what I promised, and I will live up to my promise. And, I didn't realize the year was going to start off crazy, but I'm glad. And that's the value we can give back, is by sharing the knowledge we've gained over the years with the younger generation, so the next generation doesn't make the same mistakes, but learns from our past mistakes and hopefully doesn't make them over again.
This is so meta.
Yeah, there was something.
We're doing this right now. We're sharing wisdom, and we're talking about the Young Founder Series that are sharing wisdom with us and the people that are coming after them too. So
meta, that's a new word. That's a new generation word that Paul uses because he's the most meta cool one about all 100%. Of us.
I'm not even sure what that means.
We
really.
just talked about getting, you talk about meta. To me, meta was just another, Mark Zuckerberg way of making another couple of $1 billion. But again, I wish I had an eighth of his smarts, because look at what he's built from, maybe through some people's perception, someone else's idea. However he did it better than somebody else did. People accuse Bill Gates of stealing other people's information and using it to his advantage. Okay, well, if you weren't smart enough to get it to the market, guess what? He was.
Yeah.
Nick, that's where I was going with kind of your whole path. You might have had the ground light laid for you, and you might have had the financial ability because of what they built. But don't forget, every decision you make is the future of this company. And to be honest with you, as an outsider looking in, and even in some ways that we compete, you have a lot more to offer, I think, than you give yourself credit for sometimes. You've come out with some really amazing statements that I go, wow, I never even thought of that. But that's the younger generation. And our generation, and my generation specifically, needs to learn that, my dad used to, I went up, when I had to go to school, I walked to school barefoot, uphill both ways in the snow. Okay, Dad, you lived in New York City, so everything was flat, first of all, unless you fell off a building. But to be honest with you, there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
If you didn't learn from your dad and your grandfather, and even your brothers, you wouldn't be in the position you're at now. So I hope that at some point, and I'm sure you have, Nick, knowing you're humble, you are kind, and you walk the walk and talk the talk. I'm sure you've thanked them for what they've provided to start the basis. But remember something. I hope they're remembering that you're taking the company to the next level, and your generation hopefully is making it a better company for the future. And so it'll continue for the next generation. And that's what's important.
Yeah, I think one takeaway from this is just how important the relationships and the network is, whether it's, you're distilling things from prior generations of your own family, or just other connections that you make, the connections we've made from just industry events or this podcast and the Making Chips community. But like, we went back, if we go all the way back to the beginning of the episode, we talk about business planning, the tools and the process for planning a business from when you first started and your dad was like, where's the paper? where's the business plan? To now, Mike and Paul and I would like use ChatGPT all the time. If I was going to make a business plan, I wouldn't type it out. I would have a chat GPT agent interview it out of me.
Yeah.
And then compile the report. Like just in the past 5 years, that's changed like crazy. So all these tools are different and they're more powerful, and it actually makes it easier in a lot of ways to start a business. But ChatGPT won't introduce you to the network that's going to take your career where it's going to go. That's always mattered. It's always been consistent. Some people don't spend time with their relatives that they're in family business with because they think, I already know what they have to share. And they don't get everything they can. And then, something happens and it's too late. Some people don't, like you said, some people say, oh yeah, I'm going to come visit your shop, or I'm going to do this or that. And then they never follow through, and they miss out on maybe one conversation or one other connection or one other thing that could happen that could have this ripple effect that launches them into the next big chapter of their career. So to me, AI and technology and everything, it might make it easier to do more of the mechanical or intellectual aspect of starting a business, but you still need the people, you still need the relationships. And one thing that's kind of always true is it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I think that's very true.
Nick, I mean, we've talked about this before too. I mean, to carry on to what you just said there, the fact that AI could walk nearly anybody through a good business plan, right? To put on paper, but where's the value going to be? It's going to be in those relationships that you create with your customers, your employees, your partners, your vendors. It almost puts more value on those, right? Because we can all, with the tools that are available today, come up with an amazing business plan, right? But it's that circle around us, those advisors we have, or our friends, our family, and so forth, that can make those things real.
Yeah, right on.
And you could have the best business plan in the world, if it's not yours, it's not going anywhere. I can't tell you how many people have come to me with, somebody gave me this business plan, I'm trying to make it mine. I was like, don't even waste your time. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, if you want to use the format as a basis, that's great. But if you're taking those ideas and trying to make them your own, you're going to fail miserably because you don't think your thought process is not exactly the same as the guy who brought you this information. Take that information, digest it, and regurgitate it in a way that you're transmitting the message you want to the people you want and the platform you want. I mean, think of you guys. Look at how many podcasts you've done now, from the first one to this one. I'm sure it's a very different outcome to the results. And look at where it's taken you guys as a group to now being associated with other associations, being invited to all these industry things that might not even be industry related. You're gleaning information from different segments of the market, even segments that might not be totally related to what we do, but you can take that information and make it your own once you understand how they're utilizing it for their success. And that's the biggest thing. Just looking at a company and going, I wish I had thought of Walmart before Sam Walton did. Well, hell yeah. I mean, I wish I played the lottery numbers right 2 weeks ago, or whatever the $9 billion lottery was. The reality is probably not going to happen in my lifetime. I was in Las Vegas last week and I watched a guy at the sports bet $5,000 on 4 different games. And I was close enough to hear the game. So during the day, the next 2 days I watched, this guy lost $20,000 plus the 10% offset you have to pay. So I'm telling you right now, if I had $20,000 splurge, certainly wouldn't be in Las Vegas. I just made everybody with me mad because I'll sit down on a slot machine and just put money in and just push a button. And some lady finally said from behind me, sir, it's not working. I looked up and it was $1,700. I was like, oh. And she's like, you're going to walk away? I was like, yeah, I have their money. Why would I stay? And she was like, but the machine's hot. I was like, good luck. And I walked away and she just pumped money into it. And I just watched for about 5 minutes. She lost like $300. I was like, have a safe day. Safe day. But it's, people that think that they're going to, and I guess where I was going with this was, you can't gamble with your future either. You have to have some semblance of knowledge about the what you're getting into. Mike, I'm sure you didn't buy a machine shop, or Paul, I'm sure you didn't start ProShop, and Nick, I'm sure you didn't buy Hennig without thinking it through, or you didn't just go, hey, I think this will fit in great and we're going to be successful at this. You'd be broke right now. So to be honest, it's nice to see that when I watched people like you guys become successful through your own creation and through your own self-promotion and marketing and through looking at the industry from an unselfish set of eyes. You guys give back all the time, and that's what I respect about you, and that's why we're having these conversations. I think that you guys not only walk the walk, you talk the talk, and you are people that give back. You're not in it just for yourselves. That's kind of cool to see. And if nobody else has thanked you guys, I appreciate what you do because you make me a better person, a better leader. So
thank you, Larry.
Yeah, thank you.
I think why we're having these conversations is because we see you as somebody who does that, and we're doing a young entrepreneurship series, and you're somebody who has a lot to offer. Somebody who's thinking about getting into this industry and starting their first shop, or I mean, yeah, we could talk about the right products to buy and what work holding and all that, but that's the first time the word work holding has been said this entire podcast, because Larry's got a lot to share. Sometimes it has to do with the products. Most of the time it has to do with just how to be successful in life and business.
Dude, you know what? Being almost 64 years old, you know what I've learned is that I know about that much. And in the grand scheme of things, my input is my input. You know, the only people that really seem to give a rat's patoot about it is my grandkids and my kids. And my kids care less and less the older they get. So my only saving grace is my grandson still thinks the world rises and sets on me. So I got about another 2 years before I'm out of fans. So
there you go.
But it's fun.
It's so funny.
By the way, Mr. Van Meter, congratulations on your new family member this year. So
my nephew. My nephew. Yes.
I know. I saw you. That cute little man.
He is.
So.
Yeah.
Hey, Larry, just real quick as we wrap up,
yes, sir.
I do have one work holding question for you.
Okay.
So what is the latest what's coming in work holding that we need to all pay attention to and learn to? What does SMW Auto Block have going on that we need to check out, or what do you see coming? What's the trend? I think that
you're going to see further and further, and Nick, this is probably self-serving for both of us. I think automation is what the future brings, guys. I think that you're going to see the companies that aren't in it now will either become part of an organization that does do it, or will be swallowed up by organizations that, if they refuse to do it, see value in their product. You know, if you'd have told me 15 years ago that we'd be selling electronic and electric work holding, I'd have laughed at you and gone, get your tinfoil helmet out, put it on, and the aliens will stop bothering you at night. But, I sat the other day at the SHOT Show, and a gentleman sat in our booth, and he looked at me, he goes, I've been buying your product for probably close to 40 years. What's with the orange things that look like they got wires plugged in them? I said, well, we have the first product available that has the ability to transmit power and data simultaneously across an air gap. And he just looked at me, he goes, what? Tell me where that would work. And I started explaining. He goes, that's like science fiction. And I was like, yeah, no kidding. He goes, I feel the same way. I said, but the reality is, if we don't continue to grow, we're dying. And, you're either growing or dying in this business. If you're not innovating, you're imitating, and imitations don't last. Mm-hmm. Ask the guy that, knocked off like Levi's or whatever they did, or, the second guy that developed CDs. I don't think he's very wealthy, but talk to the guys at Corning who created the first magnetic memory disc that became CDs and DVDs. Even though he worked for Corning, guess what? He became a very wealthy man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So having the ability to progress, and I think in work holding, you're just going to see it get more and more automation centric. Everything we do now is with automation in mind, and to be automated.
Backing that up, Larry. I mean, it's the lines between work holding and automation are blurring, and all these work holding companies are also becoming automation companies. And I mean, I'm one of them. And our system uses your APS to secure the pallet during transfer.
Right.
So I love it. We're working together on that whole
and our partnership,
right?
Nick. And, if you'd have said 10 years ago we were going to do this, we'd have both probably laughed and gone, we're competitors. I talked to every director from all of our competitors, whether it be you, Nick, or Matt from Fifth Axis, or Milton Gurry from Shunk, or I give my competitors names out all the time, and when I do that, you should see an end user's face. They're like, you're going to give me your competitor's name? I was like, yeah, they're better at this than we are. And they're like, well, doesn't that frighten you? I was like, no, not at all. And they're like, what do you mean? I go, I know with what I'm sending you for, they do it better. If you have something else, I'll show you where I'm better than they are. But I don't ever have to talk about it. I just show them what makes me better, not what makes my competitor weaker. I think that's a cop out for most salesmen. And I think the people that take that path will not be long-term successful. I think to have the ability to share information and give the right information. As far as a company, what are we doing different? I guess if I had to say anything, it was we never imitate, we innovate. So we may look at a product and go, hey, we see this product, and I'll give you a perfect example. Having the 52 and 96 millimeter pins, Nick. The whatever you want to say, whoever invented it, whether it be Lang or Fifth Axis or pick a company.
Everyone's got that different spread nowadays, anyway.
Yeah, we all have a version of it. Well, unless you're doing something different, and for us, it was creating a product that didn't have the inherent flaws of, the weak spots of how you pull the stud into a base unit into your 0 point. Having all of our new products be sealed instead of open screws or, no chip flushing windows. And every piece of our automation now has the accompaniment for automation. And people will say, hey, what's the grooves? And you're saying, well, how are you going to put a robotic hand? Oh, yeah. So I can grab, you can grab one of the robot. So I think that with that in mind, everything moving forward with us is going to be sealed, automatable, and probably have some sort of monitoring or electrification available or sensoric monitoring capabilities. I would say beyond that, I think you're going to continue to see improvements. I think there'll still be innovations. Look at the guys, what Nick is with the blue photon, the guys that made the adhesive.
That's another new partner of ours. It's really cool how that works.
Yeah, why didn't I think of taking silly putty? Why didn't I think of taking silly putty and showing it how to get hard with UV light or however you cure it? Now I don't even know enough about it to be. I didn't even know enough about it to be dangerous, but just seeing things like that always spur my ooh, what? That's kind of a cool idea. What could we do well, other than making a little snowman out of blue photon, I really can't come up with any other ideas at this point. So I'm gonna leave that to those guys. But there's always some new, innovative little idea. I think the other thing that you'll see is more and more ability to do quicker changeovers and have accurate, repeatable setups. I think the less knowledgeable people become about industry and what we do, the more valuable product is going to become, and it has to be more intuitive. And I think with everything we design is with that in mind. Again, we're still a family-owned company. We're still I consider us a small organization. But since I've come to, I've been associated with this company in one form or another since the 80s. And again, if you'd have told me we'd be doing anything but chucks 40 years ago, I'd have laughed and gone, yeah, okay, well, whatever you're smoking, I want a little bit of it. And that was probably those years anyhow. So, but to be honest, it's just, I think that we all need to be aware that there's a spot for all of us in this, and the pie is only so big. If you do this right, you can continue to take your pieces of the pie, and our pieces, Nick, may be getting bigger because of what we're doing with innovation, and you're in the same position. That doesn't mean we're doing anything wrong. It just means we're doing things righter than other people. And I think that's the correct English, but I never said I spoke the English very well anyhow. So, with this accent, I might as well slaughter it all together. But I think that when you look at our industry as a whole, we need to realize we're a very small part of a very big industry, and we have to be good partners too. And I think it comes back to that. Anything we develop is with our partners in mind, including guys like you, Nick, where we're working out these industry partnerships to go to market different ways. And, I don't care who knows it. I would sell your product. You would sell my product. It doesn't matter whose name on it. You know what? We're growing our industry, making it stronger. And that's what's important in the end. Strengthen our industry and the future of this industry. And, coming full circle back to young entrepreneurs. All I will say to young people that want to do this is come into this with an open mind, an open heart, and an open purse, basically, because you're going to need all of the above. And remember, one good thing or 5,000 good things are outweighed by one bad thing. And remember, all you have to come to market with is your name. And when I was very young, my dad gave me something that was, and Mike, I think I'm old enough, still an old enough, or an old enough differential in age between you and me is enough. I don't know if you remember Swift. They used to publish little limericks and stuff on things. I still have it somewhere. I wish I could show it to you guys. It's called Guard It Wisely and Well. And it was a thing my father gave me, and it talked about a young man who was speaking to his father. And his father said, I don't have anything I can give you that's financial, but all I can give you is my name. And I started life when it was clean and it doesn't have any black marks. If you can continue down your path throughout your whole career and not put black marks on the name, you're successful. And I've tried to honor my family by not doing a lot of stupid shit. But, it's, we all make mistakes and we all do dumb things. We all say things we should have never said. But you know what? If you have the ability to recognize it and step back and go, hey, you know what? I should listen more than I speak. It's the hardest part of sales. But, I've always said, if you sit someplace long enough, they'll tell you what they want, how much they'll pay for it, when they need it, and what their purpose for it is. The biggest problem we all have is we want to get our idea across. And for a sales guy, it's very hard to get them to sit in the corner and go, okay, I'll listen. Well, I learned that the hard way too. So.
Yeah, that's so good, Larry. Just before we close, you just reminded me of the episode I did with Yuto Matsura, and he had me tearing up in it because he said, he was in Canada studying to get his degree when his grandfather passed away, and everyone was asking him, like, wow, he left you this inheritance, this business, this great machine tool brand that's got all this prestige. And Yuto was like, yeah, what he really left me, though, was the reputation and the name. And everyone mentioned him for his humility and his integrity. And even though he didn't speak great English, all the Canadian shop owners knew the guy and thought the world of the guy. And so I thought that was pretty special. And then to hear it again from you, when you hear the same thing from multiple channels, it's pretty good indication that it's true and that it's something that can be passed on from this podcast to everyone else who's maybe just starting their business. What would you want your children and grandchildren to say about whatever it is that you name your business? Hopefully that carries on.
Yeah. All right, shop owners, listen up here. I think all of us know we are in one of the most capital intensive businesses there is, and margins are tight and we're always fighting issues. And then when we make money, what do we do with it? Stock market's up and down all over the place. Well, I get asked a lot about where can I invest my money? I'm a firm believer as business owners, you've got to invest in yourself first. You need to reinvest capital into yourself. So the number one thing that I've done in this industry in investing was ProShop ERP. We've been using ProShop since 2018, and my payback literally was within weeks. With their per user based pricing, I knew when I made the decision, I only needed to save my workers roughly 1 hour per month. We saw within the first week, we were saving multiple hours per day. That type of ROI just doesn't come along very often. Outside of that, the real value is being able to quickly implement best practices across my entire shop from the time we get an order to the time we ship it, scaling my business with confidence, being able to go out and know that I can deliver on my promise to deliver quality parts to my customer, and then gaining insights into every job, employee, machine, and every process in our business to really drive efficiency and look for opportunities for improvement. That's where the real value in your business drives. So visit ProShopERP.com, book a demo, and start realizing ROI today. That's ProShopERP.com.
My daughter asked me what I would like them to remember about me when I'm gone. I was like, do you know something I don't know? And I was like, just remember that I did the best job I could with what I had available to me. And I love you more than I could love anything else. And I hope you feel the same way about your kids. And, Nick, you've heard this story before, and I think you all have, is, my grandson asked me, I don't know, almost a year ago now, what I did for a living. And I said, oh, buddy, I sell workholding. And he just looked at me. And then it took me an hour and a half to explain to him exactly what I just told him. So, Nick, to your point, I went to ChatGPT, and I said, how do I explain to a 5-year-old what I do? And I said, I'm the president of a company that makes workholding and innovative products for manufacturing and metal cutting. And it came back with the coolest, most innovative thing. And basically the gist of the story is the way I explained it to my grandson is, buddy, Poppy runs my grandson calls me Poppy, by the way. And he said, Poppy runs a company that makes a product. And I said, the product's like magic hands. And I said, those magic hands hold really expensive parts in really expensive machine tools. And I said, and those magic hands are like having friends all over the world. It's like having friends in Germany and Japan and Italy and Spain. And I said, we put those on machine tools that manufacture the parts, but we just hold them. I said, so basically, I'm the boss of a company who makes magic hands for really expensive machine tools. He's like, oh, so you make things that hold things. I was like, yes.
Yeah.
And
my work here is done.
It's true. Sometimes it's not what you say, it's how you say it and the audience that you're presenting it to. And I guess if people are trying to get into our industry, don't try to come across with big words like delicatessen, like my dad used to say. Explain it in simple terms that people can understand. So to be honest with you, it's not the message, it's how you present the message. And same thing when you're starting a company. Just know the end game that you want, not what the industry wants, not what your parents want, not what your children want. What out of this is going to make your contribution to society, make you a better person, and people go, you know what? He might have been a big mouth and he had magic hands that was gross. But let me tell you something. He was honest. He had integrity. And in the end, we'll remember him as a guy who gave back to the industry that gave to him. And before I get choked up and start getting weepy because, it checks your mortality, guys. I'm 3.5 years away from retiring. And when I started talking about this 10 years ago, my family's like, oh, God, Dad, it's 10 years. And my kids are like, Dad, how's it feel? I was like, I don't know. That 10 years is going pretty quick,
Yeah.
But I'm psyched and I'm excited because the next generation, Nick, is people like you. And, if people want to believe it or not, you guys are the rest. You guys are our future. And as much as my father told me I was going to screw up the world, Nick, and I'm sure your father told you were going to screw up the world with what you were doing, guess what? We all did okay for ourselves. We're all sitting here talking to people about what we do. And apparently somebody wants to listen to what we have to say. And if not, you know what? I just wasted about an hour of your guys' time. You're never getting back. So, there you go.
Definitely not an hour.
So for the man with the magic hands, for the man with the magic hands, try to go to sleep with that in your head tonight.
Hey, Larry, thank you so much for helping us give back to the industry that's given you and all of us so much. We end every episode the same way, and that is, if you're not making chips,
you're not making money.
Bam.